In the Sambandha lessons, we deepened our understanding of Srila Prabhupada's relationship with us as our founder Acharya. Now, in the Abhideya phase of our journey, we will explore how each of us can develop that relationship by deepening our commitment to Srila Prabhupada's mission. In this lesson, we'll trace his mission's origin and development in India before it manifested in the West. So there's a rather famous image of Srila Prabhupada honoring prasadam in his rooms at the Radha temple, gazing upon Srila Rupa Goswami's Samadhi tomb, which you can't do anymore because they built a structure over the tomb. Too bad. Now, 10 years before this photo was taken, it was taken in 1972 by my god-sister Vishaka Devi, who the late great Jamuna Devi said to Vishaka, her friend, she said, "Vishaka, I'm serving Prabhupada lunch every day, and you've got to come with your camera to take a photograph, because this is how it was when Prabhupada was all alone." So just after he'd been served, and just before he took his first bite, Prabhupada kindly agreed to, look out the window the way he did when he was all alone there. And there is the image. Shaka being a world-class photographer went, and you got a classic picture. So 10 years before this photo was taken, Srila Prabhupada sat alone in his quarters, translating Srimad Bhagavatam and begging Srila Rupa Goswami for empowerment to execute Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's order to preach Krishna consciousness in the West. He had received the seed of that order during his first meeting with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta 40 years before. Whoop. Okay, so how many people have read the Lilamrita? Have you read Prabhupada's life story? This is a must read. If you want to know about your foundational spiritual master, read this book. And how many have read the unabridged? Oh, see? You read all the volumes? Okay, don't just read the little black paperback Prabhupada. That's a horribly condensed version. You got to read all the volumes if you want all about your founding father. Okay, that's your homework. Okay, so if you read the Lilamrita, you'll know that Prabhupada met his Guru Maharaj in 1922. Prabhupada said, I was a devotee of Gandhi then. I was Gandhi's devotee. So his friend, Narendranath Mullik, said, Abba, you must come and meet this sadhu. He's great. And so Prabhupada said, no, I don't want to go, because he had such a bad experience with so-called sadhus, growing up in his father's house, who were begging food from his father, but were not imparting transcendental knowledge. So Prabhupada said, so my friend Naren, he dragged me. There's a Bhai Charan Day. He dragged me to the Ultadunga rooftop in Ultadunga Junction in Calcutta in 1922. And as I said this morning, even before they'd risen from obeisances, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, you are educated young men. Why don't you preach Lord Chaitanya's message in English all over the world? Even before they'd risen from obeisances. So Prabhupada got the seed of his mission right in the first glimpse of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. All right, so they had risen, they were in the rooftop, and so, but Abhay Charan Day said, I got to test this sadhu to see if he's real. So what was Prabhupada's reply to, why don't you preach Chaitanya's message all over the world? And on the Mohan, what did Prabhupada say? Who will hear our Chaitanya's message? We're a dependent nation. No one listens to a loser. First we got to get Swaraj, right? Yeah. What did Bhaktisiddhanta say? No. Krishna consciousness is too important to wait for a change of politics. It's the urgent need of every living being. And young Abhay Charan Day, that's an electronic device, but turn it off. Abhay Charan Day, he was stunned. This is the first time somebody ever gave him an answer to his Gandhiism, you know. So Prabhupada told us later, he said, so I accepted him immediately. Not officially, not Diksha ceremony, but in my heart. It was a change of heart, right then and there. And that's the essence of initiation, change of heart. It's not about big ceremony, you know, whatever. That's just official recognition of what should happen. Naren said, here's Naren, and he said, so Abhay, what do you think? After they got out on the street, right? So what do you think, Abhay? So what did Abhay say, you know? Abhay said, oh, he's wonderful. He's wonderful. I can see, here's a person who can give a real religious idea. It's not just sentimental dogma. It's not another rubbish institution. This person, turn the lights off, please.
Lights off.
Lights off. This is serious. He can give a real religious idea. Such a nice, saintly person. Lord Chaitanya's message is in capable hands. Okay. So, but Prabhupada could not run away and immediately join the mission. He was already married. And by 1921, he was working as an office manager in Dr. Kartik Chandra Bose's Bengal chemical concern. And he had a son. He already had his first son. So he couldn't just run away. He was responsible. He couldn't just run away, desert his family, and join the mission like some pseudo-swami or something. So he decided, well, I'm going to start reading this saintly person's books. And then the next year, 1923, he was so capable in his job that he decided, I'm going to start my own business. So he moved his family from Calcutta to Allahabad, Prayag, and started Prayag Pharmacy. But the seed of the mission went with him. He was always thinking of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, reading his literature, and he was hankering for the day when he would be able to meet him again. He was traveling, you know, he was at his pharmacy, but he was also traveling and drumming up business, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was traveling, so it wasn't really possible at that time to connect physically like that. But in 1928, two of the Gaudiya Math sannyasis walked into Prayag Pharmacy in Allahabad, and they said, Abhay Babu, we've heard you're a very nice Vaishnav, and we hear you're a very good organizer and businessman, so please help us open up a branch of the Gaudiya Math in Allahabad. And so Prabhupada said, oh, these people, I know these people, they're from the Gaudiya mission, such a nice, saintly person, spiritual master. Yes, I must help them. So we did. He helped them launch the Allahabad Gaudiya Math. And the next thing that Prabhupada tells us about his life in the Gaudiya mission was that in 1932, he was on Braj Mandal Parikrama. He was getting more involved. And he was with the Yatris, and they were stopped at a town called Kosi. Anybody been on Braj Mandal Parikrama at all? Anybody? I haven't either, I confess. Anyway, there's a town on the northwest side of Braj Mandal. It's called Kosi. Kosi? You've been? Okay, good. So, His Holiness Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj announced that tonight is the last night Guru Maharaj will be with us on the parikrama. So he's giving us a choice. Guru Maharaj says we can either stay and listen to him speak here in Kosi, or we can go to a nearby village where there's a Sheshashayi Vishnu deity. And most of the people did that. They just wanted to go see this big, spectacular Vishnu deity. But Prabhupada told us, he said, I was thinking, what will I see at this Sheshashayi? Let me stay in here, Guru Maharaj. So we did. And Prabhupada said, he was speaking in such a high philosophical way. If you've ever tried to read Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, the recorded spoken word or the written word in the book, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's strategy was to preach in English in such an intellectual way that he could out-intellectualize the Western intellectuals who had been telling the Indians for 200 years how inferior their culture was, right? So he was trying to prove to them that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual culture is vastly superior to anything from the West. So, Prabhupada said, so he was speaking so high, sometimes I could follow him, sometimes I couldn't, but I loved to hear him speak. And because I was serious about hearing, now I'm serious about speaking. So there's a big hint about how we have to be. So, Prabhupada stayed and he heard him. And then, that was 1932. That was for Kartik. Now, fast forward a year, 1933, and it's Kartik season again. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, this time, he's visiting Allahabad, where Prabhupada has his pharmacy. And then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is visiting the Allahabad Gaudiya Math, which Prabhupada helped launch. So someone recommends Abhay Babu for initiation. And now here we'll see how that goes. So who's got the mic? Okay. Why don't you read that? Oh no, I forgot the whole thing. We're going to go back to the beginning. 22, read this. Just read that.
While the two young men were still rising and preparing to sit, before any preliminary formalities of conversation had begun, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta immediately said to them, "You are educated, young man. Why don't you?"
See, we're catching up. I'm sorry, I don't usually do this. But we're catching up to where I left off. Okay, why don't you
preach Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu message throughout the whole world?
Right. And so then Prabhupada said, who will listen to us? And then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta came back with his answer. And then Prabhupada said this later.
Srila Prabhupada, I was from a Vaishnava family, so I could appreciate what he was saying. Of course, he was speaking to everyone, but he found something in me. I was so much struck with wonder.
So much struck with wonder. And
I could understand. Here is the proper person who can give a real religious idea.
Yeah. So now it is 1933, and someone does recommend, see that nice, now the seed sprouts. And there's the initiation, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and the Abhay Day becomes Abhay Charan Aravinda Das. And someone recommends, before the initiation, someone recommended, and read this.
With folded palms, Abhay looked up humbly at his spiritual master. He and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta were now face to face, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta recognized him and was visibly pleased to see him. He already knew him. Yes, he said, exchanging looks with Abhay. He likes to hear. He does not go away. I have marked him. I will accept him as my disciple.
I have marked him. He noticed that there's this young, educated person, and he likes to hear from me. So that, therefore, he initiated him. Yes. Okay. So that's 1933. Now, fast forward a couple of years, 1935, as I mentioned this morning, without the aid of the images. 1935 was a huge year in Prabhupada's spiritual life. He received 3 major blessings. 2 of them very sweet, and 1 of them very grave. So, the situation is, now this one relates first of all to Srila. This image relates to the 3rd blessing, which is very grave. That's why I see this look of concern on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's face. But let's go back to February of that year. This is also Kartik and Mr. Mandal. Let's go back to near the beginning of the year, February 1935, when it's the occasion of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's Vyasa Puja. And Srila Prabhupada, he still has his pharmacy in Allahabad. but he's in Bombay. He's right here in Bombay, and he's doing business here, drumming up more accounts. He's expanding. He's very enterprising. So, and he's visiting the Bombay Gaudiya Math, and his godbrother Bhakti Saranga Maharaj is the Mahant, who's the in charge. So, and he's very good English preacher. He knows good spoken and written English. So he's asked to give the keynote address. And this address used to appear in every Vyasa Puja book, every BBT Vyasa Puja book. But they don't print that anymore. I mean, they print the Vyasa Puja book, they don't print the address. Sometimes you see it. Anyway, it was a very nice address. It's called The Universal Teacher. And Abhay Charanarvinda Das starts by saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here this evening to honor the Guru, not of some sectarian concern, but he's a Jagat Guru, he's a universal teacher." And he just went on to praise Srila Bhaktisiddhanta for his stature. Now that address, the news of that address got back to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, who was very pleased by the message. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was even more pleased by the poem that Srila Prabhupada wrote. Prabhupada wrote, which is now a rather famous poem amongst Prabhupada and his Prabhupada followers, which began, adore ye that holy day, blessed in heaven, sweeter than May, when he appeared at Puri, that holy place, my Lord and Master, his divine grace. And then what we're going to hear now, I was so tickled when I found this audio clip. This is Prabhupada reciting the stanza of the poem that pleased Srila Bhaktisiddhanta the most. Let's see, hope the sound is good.
Absolute sensate Taoism, impersonal calamity Taoism.
I want to hear it again.
Absolute sensate Taoism, impersonal calamity Taoism.
Absolute ascension. What does sentient mean? Raise your hand. Anybody know what sentient means? Raise your hand.
Temporary.
No, sentient. I don't know what you were thinking of, but sentient means conscious, capable of feelings, perceptions. The source of all is not a cloud of crud or a black hole or a quark or a big bang. It's a person. Krishna. He's the greatest person. He has unlimited feelings, unlimited sensory powers. Absolute ascension. Thou, Guru Maharaj, thou hast proved. In personal calamity, thou hast moved. Now, 34 years after Prabhupada wrote that poem in 1935, in 1969, when Prabhupada and his three householder, Western, American householder couples were launching the London Yatra in 1969, Guru Das, Jamuna's former husband, found the poem in an old harmonist in the British Museum and brought it to Prabhupada and said, "Prabhupada, look at this." And Prabhupada said, "Wow, I thought this was lost. Amazing, you found this poem." Prabhupada read the whole poem, many stanzas, and then he edited his own poem. And the editing happened right in this stanza. So raise your hand if you know what word Prabhupada changed.
Moved.
Yes, what did he change it to?
Removed.
Removed, exactly. Because Prabhupada's English had improved between 1935 and 1969. He knew just the right word to use. You can sort of discern, you can sort of divine from that word that it means removed. It's, if you take poetic license. But the actual intention was to say removed. That's the more precise word. So Prabhupada is the original changer of his own words. That's another seminar. Okay, thou hast moved. So, when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, okay, you win the prize now. Okay, so where's the mic? Give it to this nice. Moved, removed, fellow. Okay, read this.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta instructed the editor of the harmonist, whatever he writes, publish it.
Whatever he writes, publish it, because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he saved that poem. he would show it to guests. Just see how my disciple knows my mind and my heart, especially that stanza. So look, what a blessing. He told Professor Sanyal, the editor, the co-editor of the Harmony, whatever he writes, publish it. Carte blanche. Immediately, everybody knows that Abhayacharya Aravinda Das is a confidential disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Whatever he writes, publish it. He wants the whole world to know what his disciple Abhayacharya Aravinda is thinking and writing. Huge blessing. That's February 35. Now, fast forward a few months to July of that year. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is touring. He's visiting some of his branches. And he comes to Bombay again, this time to Bombay, and he inspects the mutt. Bhakti Saranga Maharaj is in charge of the mutt. And he's very pleased by what he sees. He's very pleased with the cleanliness and the guests, a lot of guests coming, and the prasadam was nice, and there's a lot of publication going on and distribution. And so he's really, he compliments his disciple, Bhakti Saranga Maharaj. And Bhakti Saranga says this, let's see, why don't you pass it to, who wants to read? You want to read the screen? Okay. So here's, this is from the Milamrita.
Bhakti Saranga Maharaj admitted that much of the work was due to the Abhay Babu, who had collected a fund and established the new center. Why is Abhay living separately? Bhakti Saranga asked. He should be a president of this Bombay center.
Does anyone know the sound system here enough so we don't get this horrible feedback? What?
Because he is near to speaker.
Okay, maybe we should give the ladies a turn. Pass it over to the ladies. Over there, anyway. Okay, so Bhakti Saranga says, look, really, Guru Maharaj, Abhayacharya Aravinda Prabhu, he leads such nice bhajans, he preaches here, he gives financial help. Why isn't he the president? Okay, so where's the mic? Okay, you want to read it? Here, read this.
Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati replied, it is better that he is living outside your company. He will do when the time comes. He will do everything himself. You don't have to recommend him.
He will do. Reads like a prophecy. You don't, it's better he's living outside your company. When the time comes, he will do everything himself. You don't have to recommend him. Prabhupada told us when he heard that about what his Guru Maharaj said, he was mystified. What does that mean? I will do everything myself? And then on one occasion, Prabhupada said, that was his blessings. It must have been. He was blessing me. Otherwise, I have no qualification. And now look at what we have here, this International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So you're especially going to, so this is a big hint of what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta knew was going to happen, number one, to his own mission. Whoop. Yeah. To his own, look at the look of concern. Now we're going to the third blessing. Okay, so the third blessing is this. It's November now. They're at Brajmandal Parikrama, they're at Radhakund, there's Abhayacharya Aravinda Das with his little son, Mathura Mohan. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he only was with our Prabhupada 5 or 6 times. Prabhupada says this a few times. I was with Guru Maharaj 5 or 6 times. But those times were very intimate. Guru Maharaj would confide in me a lot. And I was amazed, but I felt very blessed. So he's confiding in his disciple that he's really concerned about the way things are going in the mission. The mission started symbolically, at least, when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta accepted sannyas through a picture of his late Guru Maharaj in 1918, Srila Gaura-Kishore. That was the symbolic beginning of the Gaudiya mission. Then in the 20s, it started booming, and then the Harmonists started in 27, and then the crowning glory of the Gaudiya mission was when 3 Vaishnava preachers went to the West, advancing the mission for the first time outside Bharatvarsha. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is confiding to Abhay. It's 1935 now, November. It's only 14 months before Srila Saraswati Thakur leaves this world. Early. Prabhupada told us, my Guru Maharaj was disgusted. And here's why. He was confiding to his disciple that ever since our benefactor, Jagabandhu Prabhu, who was a wealthy disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, built this marble palace for us in Calcutta as new headquarters. You know, they had been at Altadanga Junction, a very simple little place. And now we have this big marble palace in Bazaar Junction. Now my leading preachers, they're fighting over the rooms. They're getting attached to the opulence of the rooms. They're becoming mad after the stones and bricks, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said. So, okay, why don't you give it to Prabhu? Read that.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said to Abhay, Agun Jivabu,
Agun Jvalbe.
Agun Jivabu, there will be fire. One day, 3 would be fire in Calcutta, Gaudiya Math, and that fire of party interest would spread and destroy.
More destructive than physical fire, the fire of dissension, disruption. Go ahead.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta then said directly to Abhay,
Amar ichha chila kichu bhai Purana.
I had a desire to print some books. If you ever get money, print books.
Yes, and that went deep into Prabhupada's heart. That's why Prabhupada told us, therefore I'm translating every night in the middle of the night and I'm whipping you. I'm saying, distribute book, distribute book, distribute book. Prabhupada told us, I'm whipping you. Okay, more.
Standing by Radha Kunda and beholding his spiritual master, Abhay felt the words deeply entered his own life. If you ever get money, print books.
Print books. Bhaktisiddhanta said, I wish I could sell the marble off the walls at that Bazaar temple. If you ever get money, print books. So, that was a very grave blessing, but that sort of set the mood for Prabhupada's own mission. Now, 1 year later, a year and a month, it's now December 36. It's only a few weeks before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta departs this world. Prabhupada used the word disappointed, disgusted. Yeah. Prabhupada is in Bombay. There is Abhay Charan Das. He's still doing business in Bombay, expanding his pharmaceutical business. Because one astrologer told him he was supposed to be another Birla. By his stars and his palm, he was destined to be very wealthy. But Krishna took that destiny and customized it. He didn't allow him to be wealthy in a materialistic way, but he made him wealthy in another way. Yeah. So Prabhupada's in Bombay. It's December 1936, and he's already done a lot for the mission. He's already helped launch the Allahabad Gaudiya Math, the Bombay Gaudiya Math. His writing and his speaking has pleased his Guru Maharaj like anything. Everybody recognizes that he's a kavi, he's a very poetic and a confidential disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. But he's still feeling like he wants to do more. The missionary spirit is rising in him. And we know what Prabhupada wrote a little bit in the letter because he told us. He said, I'm a house. Well, let's see what he says. Let's give the ladies a chance. Okay, here's a little bit of what Prabhupada wrote.
I am a householder. Sometimes I give monetary help while I cannot give you direct service. Is there any particular service I can do?
So Prabhupada told us that the letter back to him was dated December 13th, 1936, from Puri, Jagannath Puri, where Prabhupada said Guru Maharaj was a little indisposed. That was an understatement. He actually was preparing to leave this world. And for some reason he had to go back. He left this world in Calcutta though. He didn't leave in Puri where he was born. Anyway, so here's the reply. Mataji, why don't you read?
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur replied, I am fully confident that you can explain in English our thoughts and arguments to the people. This will do much good to yourself as well as your audience.
Yes, and
I have every hope that you can turn yourself into a very good English preacher if you serve the mission to inculcate the noble impression of Lord Chaitanya's teaching in the people.
now if that sounds familiar, it should, because, read this, Mataji.
Abhay at once recognized this to be the same instruction he had received at the first meeting in 1922. He took it as a confirmation. There was now no doubt as to the purpose of his life.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was telling them, all of the Gaudiya Math people, to go to the West, especially his educated disciples, go to the West, preach in English. English is the rising star among the world languages. It's becoming the dominant world language. He wanted everyone to do this. So it's very clear, the record is very clear, that before he left, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta not only could see what was going to become of his own institution, it was going to basically fragment, hopelessly fragment, but he could see in the person of at least one disciple someone who would be capable of reviving it. So, on December 31st, 1936, technically it was Jan 137 because it was 5:30 a.m. on New Year's Day, but the Vaishnavas reckon the solar day by the sunrise, not by the clock. So you see it listed both ways. You either see it Jan 137 or December 31, 36. You see it both. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta breathed his last, but in the last 24 hours of his life, he told his disciples who were with him what he wanted. It was only in the last 24 hours. And you can read the transcript of this because one of the disciples took very extensive notes, and then it was later, typed out. And you read things like, we have no desire except to be the dust at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa Raghunath. We have no personal ambition. And he told them all to work conjointly. Prabhupada used the word cooperatively, conjointly. Form a GBC. That was per his father's vision. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur saw that it would take, for this movement to go to every town and village, per the prophecy of the Chaitanya Bhagavat, it would take a global cooperative effort amongst many God families, supervised by a governing body, to make sure that it stayed on track, and if anybody went off track, they'd be disciplined. And so he told him to do that. Only in the last 24 hours of his life. Unfortunately, there were already 3 camps, forming, competing. Who's going to replace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta when he leaves? You don't replace a founder Acharya. You cooperate to study his books, to distribute his books, to worship his Murti, to execute the mission. They didn't get it. And I'll tell you, it's only because we had a GBC in place in the 1980s that ISKCON didn't go the way of the Gaudiya Math. And we had the dark night of ISKCON's soul was after Prabhupada left. So much chaos. But at least Prabhupada had a structure in place for us. Okay, so that they made a half-hearted attempt, the Gaudiya Math people, to form a GBC. It quickly collapsed, that attempt, under pressure of 3 camps competing. Who's going to replace? Who's going to be the next big person? They completely misunderstood. So Prabhupada said, because all of them were unauthorized, they all fell down. Okay, so what's Prabhupada's response? Not only to the breakup of the Gaudiya mission, but then the whole world went at war. The whole world went to war, World War II. So Prabhupada had a good reputation amongst his godbrothers Okay. Who keeps... Somebody turn off that electronic device, please. Okay. 1944, Prabhupada started Back to Godhead. Prabhupada said some of my godbrothers encouraged me. They liked my speaking, they liked my writing in English. They knew Guru Maharaj wanted English preaching. So a few of us got together in Calcutta now. He was back in Calcutta by this time. And on his Guru Maharaj's appearance day, that's not this. This is a later issue, October 58. There's a whole masthead here. If you see the original issue, it's just, print on plain paper. It's just very plain. And he launched Back to Godhead, Spiritual Solutions to Material Problems. That was Prabhupada's response to the Gaudiya Math being at war with itself. They were in the courts, fighting over who owned the assets of the Gaudiya, who owned the properties, the buildings. It's a mess. And then the whole world was a mess. So what did Prabhupada do? We started a spiritual magazine because his sense of mission is rising in him. In 1944, while working and living with his family in Calcutta, Srila Prabhupada started Back to Godhead magazine in English. And this masthead that he later developed became the template for our BTG. Okay, so then the war ended, and let's see, India got its independence, right? Freedom at midnight, August 47. But as I mentioned this morning, even the month before India got its independence, Prabhupada wrote one of the main architects of Indian independence, namely Mahatma Gandhi. He wrote him a letter. My dear Mahatma Ji, I am your unknown friend. Your unknown friend. But because I am your friend, please, you should hear me. And Prabhupada's main message in the letter was this. Let's read some of the letter. I am your unknown friend. You should therefore take a note of warning from your insignificant friend like me, that unless you retire timely from politics and engage yourself cent% in the preaching work of Bhagavad Gita, which is the real function of the Mahatmas, Prabhupada couldn't resist that, you shall have to meet with such inglorious deaths as Mussolini, Hitler, Tojo, Churchill, or Lloyd George. I would only request you to retire from politics at least for a month only, and let us have discussion on the Bhagavad Gita. I am sure, therefore, thereby, that you shall get a new light from the result of such discussions, not only for your benefit, but for the benefit of the world at large, as I know that you are sincere, honest, and moralist. Awaiting your early reply with interest, yours sincerely, Abhay Charan Day, 12th July 1947. Probably that letter never got past Gandhi's secretaries. And Prabhupada's idea was, Prabhupada even said it earlier in the letter, he said, Mahatma Ji, everyone, you have the ear of the world. You're on the world stage. India is about to get its independence. Everyone loves you for your nonviolence. Now, leave politics. Leave it. It's going to be your undoing if you don't leave now. Now, I can show you Gita, your inspirational book, the Bhagavad Gita, that you're always giving credit to. I can show you deeper, as it is. But no response. Then, just after Indian independence, Prabhupada took an ad out in the papers appealing to the newfound sense of, especially the Indian male, pride of independence. Study the Bhagavad Gita, the ad read, and be a real man. And the secret ingredient of this course is that it's being delivered according to the Parampara system. Nobody responded. Nobody cared what Prabhupada was preaching in the 40s, in the 50s. Prabhupada said, I was crying alone in the wilderness. Now this letter to Mahatma Gandhi On January 30th, 1948, as you know, just after a prayer meeting in Delhi, Gandhi was shot by a Hindu extremist. And now his letter seems to us like a prophecy. But the amazing thing is that the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi, his boyhood hero, triggered the strategy for Prabhupada's mission. It was a major world event, and Gandhi had been Prabhupada's hero. So Prabhupada, when that happened, it kind of coalesced a lot of things in Prabhupada's mind. It triggered the formulation of Prabhupada's mission. So we get into this in the next lesson, how the phases of Prabhupada's strategic plan that he implemented is what we know as ISKCON. They started forming now, and he wrote about it. He wrote letters about it to government leaders. He wrote about it in his Back to Godhead. And he was using Mahatma Gandhi's name to try to advance Lord Chaitanya's movement. When India's leaders ignored Srila Prabhupada's proposals to fund a spiritual community based on Gandhi's inspirational scripture, Prabhupada revived Back to Godhead and began to further articulate his plan to rescue humanity by building spiritual communities based on the Gita's teachings. In the next lesson, we'll take a close look at Prabhupada's strategic plan triggered by the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi. Prabhupada was a transcendental opportunist. When Gandhi was shot, he thought, boy, this is an opportunity now, because when people are suffering or something cataclysmic happens, they tend to ask why. So Prabhupada, he was writing letters to, like, for example, to Dr. Sardar Patel, the deputy PM, right under Nehru. And he was saying, look, don't just make a statue honoring Gandhi where pigeons will pass stool. I can show you how to make a whole community based on the teachings of the scripture that Gandhi said was his inspirational book. They weren't interested, because Nehru especially, he was just mad after anything Western. The Prabhupada said, Nehru and his father used to come into my pharmacy in Prayag, and they never ordered anything Ayurvedic. It was always Western allopathic stuff. They were embarrassed by anything Ayurvedic or Indian. So Nehru was determined to take India in a Western direction. Okay, so nobody listened to Prabhupada. Prabhupada decided to revive Back to Godhead. He had only been doing it for a while, so we revived it. He started to articulate his mission, as you'll see in the next lesson. By the way, Hare Prabhu has said, since we did work this morning in the temple, and now that you have a good projector, and that'll start at 8 o'clock. Okay, so Prabhupada, he was still doing business. I mean, the family was not interested in his mission, nor were they even helpful to business. In fact, Prabhupada built his business up 3 times because he heard, he was going to be another Birla. So Prabhupada's plan as a household holder was, okay, then I'll get really wealthy from the business, and then when the children are grown and the business, I can sell the business or whatever, then with my accumulated wealth, I'll do the mission. That was his plan. So 3 times he built up the business. 3 times Krishna smashed it materially. Once there was a big fire, once there was a big theft, and once the family just blew it. They just bungled it. The family members were involved in the business, and they just made so many bad, they just didn't know how to do it. So Prabhupada told us later, so Krishna sent me to your country a pauper. Poor person, 40 rupees in a bag of cereal, and 200 sets of bhagavatam. See, he was spiritually rich. Then Krishna made Prabhupada rich in another way. Okay, so after Gandhi was assassinated and nobody listened to Prabhupada's idea for a spiritual revolution, then he started reviving Back to Godhead. He was still doing business, and in 1952 he was in Jhansi, in UP. And because he had a client there who was a doctor whom he teamed up with. And the doctor told us that his patients would come in, and then he diagnosed the patients, right? And then he would give the patients to Abhay Babu to write the prescription. So he was, supporting himself, seeing the patients, and then Prabhupada was selling his pharmaceuticals that the doctor prescribed. So they were a team. But the doctor said he noticed that when Abhay Babu was writing the prescription for the patients, he was also preaching to the patients about the ultimate solution to their miseries, right? So the doctor, who was also spiritually inclined, he couldn't help but hear this. So after their business deal ended, then he said to Abhay Babu, why don't you come back to Jhansi sometime? There's a local Ayurvedic medical college here, and I know some of these students would be very interested to hear you because you're preaching in a very philosophical way, a very scientific way. I think they'd be very fascinated to hear you preach your message. And so Prabhupada did. He went back toward the end of the year, October 52, and he did find some interested students. And one of the students was living on a property that wasn't even being used. It was called the Radha Memorial. Some person in the 1930s, I believe, had got this property and built such a memorial to his wife. So this student said, Abhay Babu, I think the estate executor who's been looking after the property, who's maintaining and protecting, I think he'd let you use his I'm living there just as a student, and it's not being used. I'll introduce you. So he introduced him to the estate executor, and sure enough, the person liked Prabhupada, so he offered him to use it for his teaching, his preaching. So that was in late 52, and then in 1953, May 16th, yeah, there was a launch. Prabhupada launched. He had a place to preach from. He had a preaching platform. He had interested students. So he called his organization the League of Devotees. And Prabhupada even took an ad out in the local paper. And he canvassed for his mission amongst the student community. Quote, wanted candidates from any nationality to qualify themselves as real Brahmins for preaching the teachings of Bhagavad Gita for all practical purposes throughout the whole world. Acharya Prabhu says, he asked Prabhupada later when he was his servant, Prabhupada, what was this League of Devotees all about? Prabhupada said, it was just neat. It was him, all alone, trying to start something, for preaching all over the world. Prabhupada always told us, I could never think small. Yeah. Deserving candidates will be provided with free boarding and lodging. Apply A.C. Bhaktivedanta, founder and secretary of the League of Devotees. So on May 16, 1953, Prabhupada launched, he had a grand opening of the League of Devotees. And then, here's an excerpt from the prospectus. He distributed this prospectus, which means it's information about the League, and it's an invitation to participate and to invest in this spiritual revolution. So here's an excerpt. All right, Manaji, you want to read?
To propagate spiritual knowledge systematically for checking the imbalance of life to the whole race of India and the world over, with a view to educate the people in general in the techniques of spiritual life.
Now, if you've ever read the Lilamrita and you read the 7 purposes of ISKCON, this reads like a paraphrase or a precursor, a first try at that first purpose. It's a complete echo of the first purpose of ISKCON. We live in an educational movement. That's what we're all about. Okay, so Prabhupada launched his League of Devotees. League was a very popular term. They had the Muslim League and this league and that league. So Prabhupada decided, okay, we'll have a League of Devotees. So So the league's land and buildings. See that estate executor? He liked Prabhupada, and he even hinted, when he let him use the property and the buildings, that maybe he would just gift the place to Prabhupada. That was kind of a suggestion in the beginning. So the league's land and buildings, originally a gift promise, later turned into a purchase offer. Then the center of an intrigue involving a Mahila Samhita Sangha, a ladies' upliftment society. So what happened was, Jhansi's in UP, so the governor of UP, Mr. K. Munshi, and there's a road near Chowpatty Temple, there's a K. Munshi road. So I guess he's a big person in your history. His wife, Lilavati Munshi, she was a big champion of the trying to help the condition of ladies in India, which is still an issue to this day, right? Use of women. So she had some contacts in Jhansi, a couple of ladies, and actually one of the ladies in Jhansi, who was part of this Mahila Samhita Sangha, she had been coming to hear Prabhupada. She liked Prabhupada. But then she was more convinced that, actually this property, this Radha Memorial, it would be better used for this Mahila Samhita Sangha. So she was the one who told this Lilavati Munshi about it. So Lilavati Munshi, she was the governor's wife, right? She was in a very powerful position. So she started putting pressure on the estate executor. Sell to us, we need this. And then Lilavati Munshi, she even wrote a letter to Prabhupada, Swamiji, saying, Swamiji, you are trying to start something, but you've been there for some time, nothing much is happening. We really need this property to help the ladies in India. So please just, kindly vacate the premises and let us purchase the property. And then the lady, Lilavati Munshi, she also wrote she put pressure on the estate executor. She said, if you don't sell to us, Mr. So-and-so, forget his name, those movie houses you have in Jhansi, you have your business license to operate your cinema houses, it's going to be very hard for you to renew that license unless you sell to us. She was making politics, putting pressure on the guy, sell to us. So the estate executor, he approached Prabhupada. He liked Prabhupada, but he was, his bread and butter, his livelihood was being threatened. So he's saying, Swamiji, he didn't want to offend Prabhupada, so he said, now you have to purchase. I'm sorry, I can't just deed the land to you, gift the land to you. You have to purchase the property. And then he said the price was something that he knew was way beyond Swamiji's means. But Prabhupada, you know what Prabhupada did? He said, okay, if this is what's happening, I'm going to raise the money. So Prabhupada temporarily left Jhansi. Now let's see, am I going to do that? No, the slides go another way. Okay, I'll just tell you what happened. I'll do that later. Okay. He did go to Calcutta for a while, and I'll come back to that. After he got back from Calcutta, he was getting advice, legal advice from attorneys, lawyers in Jhansi who liked Prabhupada. Prabhupada was very, likable, very respectable and impressive. They said, look, you can fight this, Abhay Babu. You don't have to leave. India has a long tradition of giving preference to sadhus. And you were here first, and we can help you fight this. But Prabhupada wasn't sure if he should engage in litigation or not. So he did a very exemplary thing. He contacted his trusted godbrother, senior godbrother, Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj in Mathura, who had this Keshav Ji Gaudiya. And he said, Maharaj, this is the situation. I've got something going here. This is a preaching platform. I don't really want to give this up, but I'm being pressured by the governor's wife is involved. So could you kindly come to Jhansi with a couple of brahmachari assistants and survey the scene and give me your frank opinion? So Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj did that. And after a few days, he said, Bhaktivedanta Prabhu, because they were calling him Bhaktivedanta by now, because they really liked Prabhupada's writing and speaking in English. Very learned, very Vaishnava. Bhaktivedanta Prabhu, you know, Guru Maharaj, he liked us to be in big population centers. He didn't like us just to be away from the people. And this Jhansi, you know, it's not really that, it's much less than it is today. It's not really, it's not worth it. You're not in the vanaprastha mode of life now to engage in litigation over a place like Jhansi. So I suggest you drop this. I know Lord Chaitanya has bigger plans for you. For now, just drop Jhansi, come with me to Mathura, help me out with the month. And you'll see, Lord Chaitanya has much bigger plans for you. So, Prabhupada did that. He went, so Prabhupada left Jhansi. Contrast that, as I said this morning, with what Prabhupada did 20 years later, when he was the only one who didn't give up on this place, Juhu. All of Prabhupada's, leading disciples gave up. They caved in under the pressure of this, rascal, Mr. Nair, because of his, political connections and his threats and all that stuff. But Prabhupada, he was the only one who didn't give up. I will be the last to surrender to the rascal, Mr. Nair. And then Krishna took care of Mr. Nair. When Prabhupada heard about his heart attack, he said, "Oh, well, I was praying the Lord to Sringadev." Right? And I never heard Prabhupada ever say that about anybody, except in the case of Mr. Nair. Okay, so Prabhupada eventually did leave Jhansi, but back up. Before Prabhupada left Jhansi, when he did go back to Calcutta at one point to try to raise the money to buy that place, even though it was he was asking a lot of money. Prabhupada knew how to make money with pharmaceuticals, so he went back to Calcutta to crank up his, pharmaceutical producing laboratory. It's called Vimaltone Laboratories. And but when he went back, famous incident, right? Krishna was not only moving Prabhupada on from Jhansi, but he was moving him on an ashram. And here's how it reads in the Vilamrita. During his Jhansi years, on a trip home to Calcutta to raise funds for the League, an incident involving Srila Prabhupada and his wife spelled the end of his householder life. Here is Prabhupada's account. So this is what Prabhupada told us. I wanted as much as possible to get her to work with me in spreading Krishna consciousness, to get her help. But she was very determined. She would not help me spread Krishna consciousness. And she was very attached to drinking tea. I was always telling her not to drink tea because I wanted to have a nice Vaishnava family. So although I was repeatedly telling her, this time I finally said, you have to choose between me or tea. Either the tea goes or I go. So she replied, give up tea drinking or give up my husband? Well, I will have to give up my husband then. Of course, she thought I was joking. And now, here's what happened. So we're going to get a lady to read this. Okay, Balaji. No, you don't want to read? Come on, read.
While Abhay was out, his wife took his worshipable Bhagavatam to the market and traded it for tea biscuits. At first he felt depressed, but then a wave of absolute resolution passed over him. His family life was finished.
You can get a lot of tea biscuits for a book, right, on the scales. Books are heavy. So Radharani Day had the gall to do that. And then Prabhupada, when he came home and saw what she did, that was the last straw. That was it. Prabhupada told us he thought, I have one daughter, she's not even married yet. God will take care. Enough is enough. Okay, again and again. Turn on. 1954. How long was Prabhupada in the room? In that ashram? Do the math. 1918, Prabhupada was married. 1954, he turned on his heels and walked out. How many years in the Grihastha ashram? 36 years. Enough is enough. Even one daughter wasn't married. He tried to arrange a marriage before. They didn't accept it. So when this happened, he said, God will take care. Now, when we were compiling the Lilamrita, I happened to be part of the team. One Paramhamsa Maharaj, the godbrother of Prabhupada, told us that when Bhaktivedanta Prabhu left his home in North Calcutta and never looked back, they didn't know that. They thought, oh, he'll come back. He's always coming and going. He'll be back. He never came back. When he left his home in North Calcutta, he came down to South Calcutta, according to this Gaudiya Math sannyasi, to my mutt. And you know what Prabhupada did? He said, Bhaktivedanta Prabhu, for 2 weeks, he was in my mutt, pacing the mutt, just chanting japa at the top of his voice. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. I don't think he said sit properly though. 36 years, finished, releasing that whole ashram. He never went back. Then he went back to Jhansi, and then he lost Jhansi, or he decided to follow his godbrother's advice. And then what followed for several years was probably the most austere years in Prabhupada's life. He was no longer in Grihastha life, he wasn't doing business anymore. He had little choice at first, but to try to help out those fragmented Gaudiya mutts. He tried to work with his godbrothers in their mutts. But he had such a missionary spirit, they couldn't handle him. He was always trying to increase what they were doing, and they would always let him go, saying, you're a favorite son of Guru Maharaj, you're too much for us. Better you work on your own. And he was telling them too, Guru Maharaj just keeps coming to me. He's been coming to me for years in dreams when I was a householder. Prabhupada said, please come out. Bhaktisiddhanta is telling him in dreams, take sannyas, please join me. And Prabhupada said, I was Harifam. Oh, Guru Maharaj, he's telling me to take sannyas, leave my family. Even that family wasn't even favorable. They didn't even want any part of this vision. So he told these sannyasis, Guru Maharaj, he keeps coming to me in dreams since my householder days. Would you consider awarding me sannyas? But they were very cool with the idea. Oh no, first you help us with the mud, we'll see how you do, And he tried to work with them. They always had to let him go because it was too much. He was too much of a preacher. They're just maintaining the mud. Finally, he met his godbrother, his trusted godbrother again, Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj, who said, Bhaktivedanta Prabhu, you must take sannyas. You must do it. So on 17 September 1959, after several years of struggling alone in the wilderness of Delhi, trying to preach to his materialistic countrymen who were not interested in his back to Godhead. Sorry, Swamiji, no time. Which became another BTG article. No time, the disease of the modern man. So on 17th September, I don't know what was Prabhupada, this is typical, maybe it was Prabhupada, but they called the press, and it became a news event. Someone who became Bhaktivedanta Muni Maharaj, who was 99 years old, standing rather straight and tall for 99, took sannyas basically to leave the world, but our Prabhupada, who's 63, he's taking sannyas to enter into the world, because he's openly saying, I'm going to the West. This is what Guru Maharaj wants. And I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know when I'm going to do it, but I'm going. And then, so before we go into what you're going to hear on this audio clip, so now we have an audio clip. You're going to hear Srila Prabhupada talking to some ISKCON, some disciples in 1968, 9 years after he accepted sannyas. He had already launched ISKCON. He was in Seattle, Washington, which you know is the home of Microsoft. But there was no Microsoft in those days. There wasn't much there at all. Prabhupada is preaching in Seattle in October 1968. And he has just gotten word that his sannyas guru has left this world. Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj. So this is very touching. You see, you hear Prabhupada glorifying his sannyas guru. And this is a good example. Prabhupada is glorifying, Prabhupada is saying things he would not ordinarily say. And also, there's a couple of things that Prabhupada says in here. And he's very emotional. You can hear he's speaking very slowly, haltingly. And he wants to give all credit to his sannyas Guru Maharaj. That's why he's saying what he's saying. Here we go.
I was sitting alone in Vrindavan, like my godbrother. He insisted that Bhaktivedanta Prabhu. Not he insisted me, practically my spiritual master insisted me, told him that you accept. Because without accepting the renounced order of life, nobody can become a so unwillingly
unwillingly I accepted. He'd already been asking his godbrothers if they'd give him sannyas, but he wanted to glorify Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj. Plus, when do you ever hear Prabhupada say that unless you take sannyas, you can't be a preacher? Prabhupada says just the opposite. This is a good example of to understand Prabhupada, you have to understand context. Why he's saying what he's saying. He wants to glorify Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj. So, Prabhupada accepts sannyas, and shortly afterwards, he hears from a couple of friends. One is an army captain, and one is a librarian, and they both say the same thing. You know, Swami Maharaj, you're trying to do this Back to Godhead magazine. But you know, people, they throw away magazines pretty easily. They don't easily throw away books. Why don't you write books? You're a good writer. So Prabhupada told us the second time he heard it, he took it that his Guru Maharaj was speaking through those people too. So Prabhupada was always alert. He always had his ears open for newsworthy things from Back to Godhead to write about, right? So he saw an item in the paper that said, Russian scientists discover antimatter. The whole world had their eyes on the Russian scientists because they had just put up Sputnik, first man-made satellite, right? So Prabhupada, he took the opportunity of that news article to preach second chapter of Bhagavad Gita in scientific jargon, calling the soul the anti-material particle, and calling the kingdom of God the anti-material planetary systems. He was giving the Vaishnava version of antimatter, and it became, of course, what's the name of the book? Easy Journey to Other Planets. That's the first book I read. Yeah. And before he even published it, he circulated the manuscript amongst theistic scientists who gave favorable reviews. So he published the book with favorable reviews. Prabhupada knew how to do things. Right? Okay, so now Srila Prabhupada must have recalled, because he's saying he's going to the West. Prabhupada's saying, I don't know how, I don't know when, I'm going to the West. Guru Maharaj wants this. he must have recalled that before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta sent his Gaudiya mission preachers to the West in the 30s, right, the 1930s, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would not let those preachers go unless and until they had a book. If you remember the Sambandha lessons, those of you who saw them, there was a book that they had to have in hand. Does anybody remember the title? Raise your hand. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, written by Professor Nishikant Sanyal, who was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's scholarly disciple. They were co-editors of the Harmonist. So finally, when the first volume of a projected trilogy on the life and teachings of Lord Chaitanya was published, then he let those 3 Gaudiya Math preachers go to the West. So Prabhupada, perhaps recalling that, he decided he needed to write something too, something of substance, something of sufficient intellectual substance and literary excellence, perhaps, that they would take notice, the Westerners. So then he hit on his magnum opus, the translation and commentary of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he started doing that in Delhi, at the Chippiwada temple. And then he'd go to Vrindavan for inspiration. But on one of his Vrindavan visits, the Mahant of the Radha Damodar temple, Sri Gaurachan Goswami, said, "Oh, you're translating the Bhagavatam, Bhaktivedanta Maharaj. Why don't you live in Vrindavan? This is the place for inspiration for writing the Bhagavatam. You can go to Delhi and do your printing business, but why don't you live here? And in fact, why don't you live here at the Radha Damodar temple? I have a few rooms here that need some repair, but if you raise the funds to fix up these rooms, I'll just let you stay here, for some token fee. Give what you like." I think Prabhupada gave 5 rupees a month for those 3 rooms. But he raised about 5,000 rupees, which was a pretty good sum in those days. It would be stronger then. So Prabhupada moved to the Radha Damodar rooms, and he'd go to Delhi to do his printing. And between 1962 and 1964, with great difficulty, because he was doing everything himself, writing, translating, purporting, buying the paper, checking on the proofs, making corrections. He was doing he wasn't spending any money on himself. He was pouring every pice into the writing. Between 1962 and 1964, Prabhupada published 3 volumes. And even to write what he did it on this kind of a typewriter. Look at this typewriter. There's no question of even touch typing on this kind of a machine. Have you ever seen a machine like this? We have an exact replica in the Honolulu, Hawaii temple to show you what kind of... To type on this kind of a machine, here's what you have to do. You got to mash it with your pointer fingers. I mean, it's tough. I learned on a machine like this. Not exactly like this, but the first typewriter I used, it was a non-electric machine in the 1950s that my father had. It was a Smith Corona. That was just when it was just Corona. So Prabhupada, over 3 years, with great difficulty, he published 3 volumes, those original, there they are, brick-colored, Indian Bhagavatams. And now what we're going to see is a plea that Prabhupada is making to the reader in English, both in the preface and in his purport to 1.5.11. The plea that Prabhupada was making to the English-speaking readers. So let's get, how about this Prabhu in the glasses? Right? Where's the mic? I'm hoping there'll be no feedback. Okay. So please read Prabhupada's plea to the reader in the preface.
Our capacity of presenting the matter in adequate language, especially a foreign language, will certainly fail, and there may be.
Okay, a little louder.
So many literary discrepancies.
Yeah, there will be so many literary discrepancies.
In spite of our honest attempt to present it in the proper way, but we are sure that with our all faults in this connection,
Ah, you read it the way Prabhupada wrote it. What's your mother tongue, sir? What's your mother tongue?
Marathi.
Marathi. Okay, it's an Indian language. So you were able to read it the way Prabhupada wrote it, because that's not English. We don't say with our all faults. We don't say, "Are this Krishna consciousness movement," the way Prabhupada does. His mother Bengali is interfering with his English. But you were able to read it. What do we say? We say with all of our faults, or all our faults. We don't say our all faults. Right in the plea, Prabhupada is doing Indian English. But Prabhupada's so sincere. He said elsewhere in the preface, it's like if you're in a movie house, and there's a fire, even if you don't speak the language of the people, they'll know what you're saying. So just listen to the substance of what I'm saying. Prabhupada's pleading with them. Don't get hung up on the Indian English. He knows he's doing Indian English. But just listen to the message. So with our all faults in this connection,
the seriousness of the subject matter will be taken into consideration, and the leaders of the society will still accept this on account of its being an honest attempt for glorifying the Almighty Great, so much now badly needed.
Right. So much now badly needed. And there's Prabhupada in 1964, the original book distributor, distributing to Lal Bahadur Shastri, your second Prime Minister, who was actually a Shastri, by the way. He knew and appreciated Shastra, whereas Nehru, when he visited America in the 50s, and he went to Harvard, and the Harvard students asked him about the Gita, he couldn't quote one shlok. He didn't know anything about the Bhagavad Gita. But Shastri, he was a real Shastri. Whoop. So here's Prabhupada distributing his copies to the Prime Minister of India in the government house in Delhi. Now what you're going to hear, and then this is 64. Now we're getting close to Prabhupada leaving. Remember, it's called His Mission's Roots. And Prabhupada is really steaming now. How am I going to get to America? So Prabhupada later on told us, this is a morning walk excerpt, March 9th, 1976, in Mayapur. Listen to Prabhupada's mood. He's talking about how he was thinking just before he came to America.
I planned when I was so traveling. Wherever they go to London, I did not go to. I was simply giving, I have to go to New York. I was giving whether I can go this way, to Tokyo, Japan, or that way, which way is cheaper, and I was targeted to New York. All right. Sometimes I was dreaming that I come to New York.
And when Prabhupada came to New York, one morning he woke up, I guess it was December or January, and he thought somebody had whitewashed the buildings because he had never seen snow. There was snow outside the window. And he thought, oh, someone has whitewashed the buildings? So, look at this. This is, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had sent his preachers to Europe, right? Because that's what the action was. But Prabhupada is always very current, very up to date. He knew the action had moved from London to New York. Krishna was giving him that intelligence, that buddhi, the dhammi buddhi yogam. So that is Prabhupada revealing his mood. Now the way we end the lesson, before we do the question and answer, we have this beautiful song. A god sister of mine named Yamini Devi Dasi. She wrote a song. She's a singer. She and her husband, they do mantra folk, mantra rock, mantra country, mantra jazz. They're my generation, but they travel around and they perform. So she wrote a song about Prabhupada crossing the Atlantic Ocean. And it's called O Atlantic. She's singing a song to the Atlantic, begging the Atlantic to please let Prabhupada come. And I think you'll be able to understand it. It's very clear. Her English is very clear. And it's a simple kind of folk ballad mood. Just her and a piano. So we're going to hear that, and then we'll have question and answer. So I'm going to sit down. The sound is good.
Prabhupada boarded the Jaladuta today. He's heading to the west without delay. His books are in their trunks just like gold. He carries a message true and bold. His teacher wanted Prabhupada to go to the places where people did not know that the God we all pray to is the same, and Krishna is his original name. Winds on the water, oh Atlantic, please bring him here so his message of service can spring anew, pleasing as the morning dew. The absolute is sentient, as proven long ago. Life comes from life, it has always been so. Impersonal deception is the only veil, puts a soul on calamity's trail. Blow winds on the water, oh Atlantic, please bring him here. Then the clouds that carry illusions flight will scatter from his words of light. Prabhupada boarded the Jaladuta today. His heart attack will come along the way, but Krishna will know just what to do, becoming a special rowing crew. Roll the incarnations, bestow your mercy. Please be kind, let him land here safely. Let freedom ring, let my heart have a song to sing. Prabhupada can see Boston Harbor now. Oh, Atlantic, I see him on the bow.
Jai Jimmy. You know that it was really rough. 35 days. He left on Friday the 13th, August 1965. The ship, finally, 35 days later, made it across. And as I said this morning, the worst was in the Red Sea. That's when he had the heart attacks. And the Mediterranean was kind of rough. But then by the time the Jaladuta got to the Atlantic became like a lake, this clear lake. And the Captain Arun Pandya, he and his wife, they couldn't believe it. They said, Swamiji, you must come back with us. We've never seen the Atlantic like this. Come on back with us. They were convinced it was because of Prabhupada's, holy presence that the Atlantic had calmed down. So, the way we begin the next lesson, starting tomorrow morning, the Jaladuta, it comes across, and and lands in Boston Harbor on September 17, 1965. And when the ship docks at Commonwealth Pier in Boston, at the same hour that Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada left this world, at 5:30 a.m. in the morning during Brahma Muhurta, same Jaladuta docked at 5:30 a.m. on September 17, 1965. Then Prabhupada wrote a poem called Markine Bhagavat Dharma, Bengali poem, Teaching Krishna Consciousness in America. And it's an excellent glimpse into Prabhupada's mood and mission as he arrived in America. So what we see, to begin the lesson tomorrow, I go out of the PowerPoint, I go into a VLC program. It's an 11-minute moving slideshow, which consists of, you're going to hear Prabhupada's song, his song sung in Bengali by an American disciple of Prabhupada's. And then you see the translations for each stanza flash on the screen as he's singing the stanza. And then you see these slides, these moving slides, giving highlights of Prabhupada's preaching Leela from 1965 to 1977. This multimedia production, 11-minute moving video, was put together by a devotee who never met Prabhupada physically. It's a UK Pandava Sainer, the second generation UK Indian devotee. That's what they call him, Pandava Sainer, at the manor and in London. And you'll see, wow, this person, he may not have met Prabhupada physically, but he's really met him spiritually. And it's very encouraging, because that's anybody's situation. You might never have seen Prabhupada physically, but you can really, anybody can meet him spiritually by living in the love and the light of his instructions. He lives forever by his divine instructions. So that's what we're going to start, and then we're going to go right into Lesson 5 as ISKCON branch, how Prabhupada exploded Krishna consciousness onto the world scene as per his strategic plan that he cooked up in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. It's fascinating to see this. Okay, so I'm going to sit down, but first I'm going to read what we should have gotten out of the lesson. And of course it's Kali Yuga, so we forget everything, but not to worry. Again, I'm going to make these notes available. I took all the notes. Electronically, I'll give them to Prabhu, Nanda Mohan. Okay, so lesson outcomes. By the end of the lesson, students will be able to identify the seeding and sprouting of Prabhupada's mission's creeper. Recount 3 major blessings Prabhupada received from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta in 1935. Recount early manifestations of Prabhupada's mission in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And finally, we should be able to describe Prabhupada's sea voyage to the West. Okay. So now I sit down and be quiet. Our relationship with Srila Prabhupada is central to everything we think, feel, and do in the Hare Krishna movement. The tendency is, during the question and answer, to want to ask about anything and everything connected with Prabhupada. Don't do that. Just focus your questions on the points of the lesson, specifically his missions groups. And that will be productive Q&A. All right? Anybody have any questions or comments? Did I go too fast? I was speaking in American English. I'm sorry. I was born that way. I was born right near 22nd Avenue. But 20 years before Prabhupada came and made it a holy place, I was born in a dungeon of demons. Yeah. Have any questions? I mean, just what I said in the beginning when I was practically scolding you, saying, Prabhupada is our foundational relationship, our foundational life. You didn't hear that. If you weren't here, who was here for the Sambandha lessons? Raise your hand. 1, 2. So this is, maybe it's news to you people. This is why we have a Prabhupada position committee here in 50 years after he came. we're still getting clear on who our founder Acharya is. We still don't get it, deeply enough. We sort of get it, but not deeply enough. And that was what the Sambandha lessons were all about. We showed through Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, and Vaishnava history how the founder Acharya provides our foundational identity, foundational relationship for all generations in his line. And that's how we're going to have more unity in this kind, the more we understand that. Okay, there's a hand, please. All right, you're not staying for the Q&A. That's the best part. Come on.
Hare Krishna.
Blind faith is not encouraged. Yes, Prabhu.
Why Prabhupada could not convince his wife and children to cooperate?
Now there's a real grihasta question. Why Prabhupada could not convince his wife? Well, those of us who we can only speculate, right? But Hare Prabhu, Hare Shari's been here, right?
Yeah.
He was Living Bhagavat series. Srila Prabhupada, the Living Bhagavatam series. His intuition about that question is that, can you imagine if Prabhupada's family had been really full-on Vaishnavas, what that would have meant, what a challenge that would have been for ISKCON. Because they might have just claimed that they owned ISKCON, right? Hey, our father passed away now, and hey, we're the rightful heirs of this organization. Even with Prabhupada's will, you'll see later in the seminar, even when Prabhupada made the final will, making it clear, who was in charge of the preaching mission, who was to oversee the assets of ISKCON. Even with Prabhupada securing ISKCON's assets, the properties and the buildings and everything, money, still, one of Prabhupada's sons went after those assets. It happened. Even after Prabhupada made this will. It was in the 1980s. It's an interesting story, actually. Interesting story. Before Prabhupada passed away in the 70s, I have a godbrother, Shadadanya, who was Shadadanya Maharaj at the time. Prabhupada told Shadadanya, if you ever have any trouble in Mayapur, here's the name, address, and number of a family friend who was very savvy legally. He has good legal connections, and he speaks Paka English, and he's a Bengali. If you ever have any trouble, legal trouble, in Mayapur, consult this person. So sure enough, I think it was 1983 or 1984, 30 years after Prabhupada had left his family in 54, Mathura Mohan, who was that cute little boy in the painting, right? He actually became very vicious. He became an Naxalite, a Bengali communist. And so he convinced his mother, after Prabhupada left, Radharani Day, convinced his mother to give him, Mathura Mohan, power of attorney. In other words, whatever he said, could be legally construed to completely represent Prabhupada's wife, Radharani. And whatever he said went. So she did that. She gave Mathura Mohan power of attorney, and then in the 80s he started making up all these lies about Prabhupada and who really was entitled to the assets of ISKCON and all this stuff, And it was a big disturbance. So Shadadanya, when this happened, Shadadanya, my godbrother, he remembered that he had this name and number and address of this family friend who was favorable to ISKCON. So he went to Calcutta from Mayapur, and he looked up this person who was still alive, and he's still very clear and sharp, And he knew Radharani Day because he was a family friend, and she was still alive. And so they went to He went to Radharani Day. And so, through this interpreter, Shadadanya was trying to persuade her. Said, Mataji, your son is saying this is complete fabrication, it's got no bearing in truth. You've given him power of attorney, and now we're asking you to rescind this power of attorney, take it back, and then stop these lies. It's threatening our organization. So here's what happened. When Shadadanya said that to Radharani Day, it all came out of how bitter and how much she resented her husband leaving the family and forcing, they were grown children. They had to fend for themselves. They had to support the family now. Even though in Prabhupada's will, he made some provision for his wife's ongoing maintenance. He left her some stipend as long as she was alive. But it just all came out, how deeply she resented that her husband had left the family, after 36 years in the family, and how they never cared anything about the mission, and even they bungled the business. They even destroyed the business once, So when Shadadanya heard Radharani Day, just venting all of her bitterness about her husband, Shadadanya just got empowered by Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya. He just poured out his heart to her. Mataji, yes, your husband left the family after 36 years supporting that family. As far as they were concerned, he should just support them till he dropped dead, right? But your husband, yes, he left the family, but he saved so many. He made the whole world his family. He saved me. And then she started listing all of his achievements and accomplishments and what he was doing in 108 temples, and, thousands of disciples, and so many people have been saved from, so many Bideshis have been saved from a lecha life and hellish future. And he went on, and Shadadanya just told me this recently. I didn't even know this. This was like amazing. And then as he was going on, he began to see in Radharani Day's eyes that she began to understand what her husband actually did, and her eyes began to tear up. She got very emotional. And so by Shadadanya Prabhu has the unique distinction of being the only disciple of Srila Prabhupada who preached to Prabhupada's wife, Radharani Day. And he convinced her to rescind, to take back that power of attorney. And so it neutralized the threat to ISKCON. So when I heard Hare Prabhu say that, I think this was Krishna's arrangement, that, nobody in that family was really the most friendly is this Vrindavan Chandra Day, who you can see sometimes visits Mayapur. And after, here's another one. After Prabhupada did leave the family, and did go back to Jhansi, and then they saw that he wasn't coming back, Vrindavan Chandra Day went to Jhansi while Prabhupada was still in Jhansi and begged him to come back. You know what Prabhupada did? He said, not only am I not coming back, but you, Vrindavan, you should stay with me in Jhansi and become a full-on brahmachari and help me with the League of Devotees, help me with the mission, help me with spiritual revolution. But it was too much for Vrindavan Chandra Day. He couldn't handle it. He went back, to Calcutta. Because he had to carry some weight now. He had to, as the old son, he had to support the family. So it was kind of like, I think Hare Prabhu was right, because that story Prabhupada told us, that when Gaur Mohan Dey, his father, his pure devotee father, had married Prabhupada to Radharani Dey, Radharani, I don't know what the maiden name was, anyway. Prabhupada, after some time, went to his father, he told us, and said, I told my father, I don't like my wife. I don't like her. I think I'd like to marry, he wanted a second wife. And he had somebody in mind. But what did Gaur Mohan Dey say? Oh no, this is very good, you don't like your wife. This is very good, because Gormohan Dey, unlike Rajni, his wife, was grooming his son to be a pure devotee of Radharani and be a great preacher. He was grooming his son to be, he would ask any sadhu or even a so-called sadhu, please bless my son, he can become a pure devotee of Radharani. And his wife wanted Abai wanted to go to England to study, and no, I'm not going to let him go to England, and I don't want his money, I'm not going to let him become a barrister and become contaminated, by Western ways. I want him to be a great preacher. Because she said, why are you teaching him, why are you having this Mridanga wala come and teach him Mridanga? This is useless. No, it's not useless. This is going to be a valuable tool. And Prabhupada told us, maybe he knew, maybe my father knew. So, what happened at the end, that kind of resonates, because Gormohan said it's very good, like It'll be much easier for you to enter into the next phase, the Vanaprastha phase, and sannyas later on. So, as far as I'm concerned, from studying the record and hearing Prabhupada speak about his former life, this is all part of it. In fact, as we speak, I'm writing a piece about this lesson. And the trailer, the lead into the piece is, how do I put it? From the day Srila Prabhupada met his spiritual master to the day he boarded the Jaladuta, Lord Krishna arranged or prepared Prabhupada's life for the ultimate benefit, for everyone's ultimate benefit, especially Prabhupada's. It was divinely arranged. From the moment Prabhupada was born. He was born on Nandotsava, the day everybody's celebrating Krishna's birth, after Krishna's born at midnight, right? And then, And in his childhood, he's very attached to deity worship, especially Ratha Yatra, right? Which now is all over the world, by his divine grace. And Prabhupada told us, one astrologer, sometimes he would tell me, Hukum chalega, as you say in Hindi, Hukum, your order will be executed. And then what's the second word, chalega?
Chalega. Order will be executed.
Hukum chalega, your order will be executed. So both in his stars and in his palm, there was a divine destiny there. And he was supposed to be rich. And Krishna did make him rich. He gave him thousands of disciples, tons of Lakshmi. He could stay anywhere in the world because he was using every pice and every second in Krishna's service. Therefore, Prabhupada was unlimitedly spiritually rich. But materially, Prabhupada said, Krishna sent me to your country, a pauper. But that's what endeared Prabhupada to us even more. Here's this exalted person willing to go down into the depths of New York City and preach and be, chased by crazy hippies and just, spending that first winter. Maybe, we'll see. Yes. I remember that winter because I grew up there. The winter going 65 and the 66, it was wicked. Icy winds that take your breath away. And there's Swamiji in his little pointy Swami shoes, and his dhoti. Okay, so, that's Krishna's arrangement. More on that? Same?
No, one other question.
One more. Okay, it's 2:40. We got 5 more minutes.
Somebody else?
All right. Is it a long one or a short one?
Srila Prabhupada was, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had given the message very clearly that preaching should be the main thing. But still, why did Prabhupada carry on with his business and, he didn't get I don't know, maybe you can elaborate. why he still persisted with his business for so long time? With the idea that okay, fine, I'll make money and then I'll preach.
Right.
When I believe he had got the message right up front.
Yeah. Well, 1922, he accepted him as his spiritual master immediately, and he wanted to. He actually wanted to join the mission. He wished he could have, but Prabhupada was responsible. He didn't just desert his family; he was responsible. So, and plus, he knew by his destiny, he was supposed to be a wealthy person. So that was his plan, to be a responsible householder, because that already had happened. Okay, that's what my destiny in this life, to be a family man, for now. And if I'm going to be wealthy, then as I said, when the kids are grown, I'll sell the business with my accumulated wealth, then I'll do the mission. And 3 times, he built it up. 3 times Krishna smashed it. And every time Krishna smashed it, what verse would Prabhupada think of? Do you know? There's a verse in the 10th canto. Yasyaham anugranami harishe taddanam shanai. Krishna says in Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 88, Text 88, if someone's very sincere and at the same time is very materially entangled, my special mercy upon this person is that I take away everything from this person, so that his friends and family, his so-called well-wishers, so-called, won't have anything more to do with him. They'll think he's a loser. But Prabhupada, that happened 3 times. Prabhupada persisted because this was his strategy. This is the only way he knew. Finally, the 3rd time, okay, enough is enough. Because his family did bungle the business just before the tea or me incident. And then Prabhupada said, okay, enough is enough, God will take care of it. So then, Prabhupada, but by then his sense of mission was so strong, he didn't, you'll see in the next segment of the Markine Bhagavat Dharma song and the translation, Prabhupada's moved. He feels personally powerless, but he has absolute faith that Krishna wants this. So he's willing to go, even at the advanced age. And he's just, I'm here to make me dance, O Lord. I'm your puppet. Make me dance. I'm here. I have no power to convince these people. These people are animals. They're Videshis, they're Malechas, they're Yavalas. But you can do it, and I'm here to, you can do it through. And that's what we saw. That's why we bowed down to Prabhupada. Because in one person, we saw absolute power, the absolute power of the Almighty manifest through absolute humility. And you don't see that in the material world. And as soon as you saw it, you just bowed down and stirred.